know what? Why not? It's been a little bit since we last tackled the Metroidvania. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Touhou Luna Nights. Funnily enough, I'm actually doing this as a little bit of a throwback, as one of my earliest LPs on the channel, I think it was my 7th or 8th overall, was actually a Touhou fan game similar to this one, but I'll get more into that as we go through the first stage and all that. Let's get into the intro cutscenes. The time has finally come. Now, my world will begin. Are you ready, Sakuya? Where am I? Sakuya? Sakuya? Can you hear me, Sakuya? This is my space. This is Lady Vermilia's voice. What do you mean by space? This is a magic space I made based on Gensokyo. It's exactly the same as the real thing. But even the weather is the same. Pachi didn't have to go that far. This isn't Gensokyo? That's right. Overcome the various tests I prepare and make your way to where I wait. This is another elaborate game you've created, Lady Vermilia. Isn't it wonderful? Oh, yes, I've put a limit on your powers as well. A limit? To mean my power to stop time? Of course! A new game isn't fun if you're already powerful. You shouldn't be able to use your powers very well now. Okay. That's all, Sakuya. Entertain me. It looks like this won't be a straightforward game. Worth noting, as you go along this first little stretch, there's several signs that'll actively give you the tutorials, but actively, for me, these buttons are technically inaccurate, as these only reflect the default controls. If you update your controls in the main menu screen, which you can do, I actively have changed them around a little bit. Starting off, Sakuya can't do too much in this game. You can throw knives horizontally and vertically, and you can throw them diagonally downwards if you're in midair. But if you hold the attack button down, you can charge with a meter, and releasing it does slow down time temporarily. That's going to be useful getting around certain platforms or even certain attacks or boss fights in the case you're having trouble seeing where you're going. What was that? I think I've seen that shape somewhere. Now, one of the mechanics that we're going to get introduced to really quickly here in this next screen is one that's pretty familiar to Touhou players, but in a situation like this can definitely take a lot of getting used to: grazing. Effectively, if you get too close to an enemy or their attacks, you can actively sap away energy from that enemy, either to restore your HP if it's blue, your MP if it's pink, or eventually even your time meter whenever we get the ability to use that up at the top center of the UI. But we just got a level up there, and that's because killing enemies does give us experience points. You're Heido no Aku, right? Oh, hello. Hello. I mean, what are you doing in a place like this? There's no particular reason. I'm tired, so I'm resting. Oh. Something feels off. She must be an imposter Lady Vermilia's space created. It must be fame we met here. If you would like, shall I make a record? Oh, right, your specialty is keeping records. I don't know what'll happen, so can you do me the favor? I understand. Then please make a phone call from that telephone booth. Telephone booth? The green box over there. Please, try it. Ah, payphones. Nostalgic. Hello? I hear Aku's voice from this box? Don't worry about the details. If you make a phone call like this, you can make a record. Please, use it often. Okay, sure. Thank you. I'll use this again. Whenever you see a phone, it's your save point, and you don't have to do anything outright. Just walk past it, and you will automatically save. So really early on, you're going to want to get a real good grasp of grazing enemies and their attacks, as it is the best way to restore your MP, and MP is actively how you use pretty much every attack in the game. If you look, whenever I actively do my main attack, which is throwing 3 knives, I do lose 3 MP, and so if you're getting really close and personal with enemies and spamming the fire button, you're probably losing your MP pretty quickly at this point in the game when it's still relatively low. With that said, make sure you go out of the way to kill enemies for a couple of different reasons.
The flight test was a success.
You are Nitori, right? What is that vehicle?
It's a robot I made. Anyways, human, what are you doing here?
This Nitori seems to be an imposter too. Well, there must be a reason she exists. Let's try talking to her. I have my reasons. And what about you?
I guess you could say I'm flight testing this while doing some business.
Business?
Yep, business. For instance, what do you think about this watch?
A watch? Sorry, but I already have a favorite watch. I don't need another one.
You should take it. You can't use your power right now, right?
How did you know?
If you use this, you can control your power to stop time. It has some strong magic. You should be able to use your power again with this.
Control my power?
For the time being, I'll let you have it for free as a sign of our acquaintance. I have a feeling only you can use this.
I guess I'll take it if it's free.
Use the right bumper to stop time.
Right bumper. Okay, got it. So Sakuya's main ability in this, as well as a certain other game, as well as the main series in general, is time stopping. However, because it would be ridiculous to have it be permanent in a video game, we actively do have a timer to work with here. By default, if you stop time, you can only stop it for up to 100 seconds, quote-unquote, at a time. Wow, so delicious. Now my HP and MP have fully recovered. The drinks from vending machines are full recoveries no matter what. You can even do them multiple times in a row. There's no cost for it. It can control my power to manipulate time. It's not to the full extent, but there's nothing I can do. It's annoying to depend on a tool, but I guess I'll have to use this for now. Worth noting with that, this game's script definitely needed some proofreading when it came to the English translation. There's going to be quite a few weird sentence phrasings throughout, and it's just, at this point, kind of almost part of the charm. Notably, there is a little bit of a minigame that even technically counts for collection if you look at the map screen by pausing the game, by trying to get the cans from the vending machines into the nearby trash cans, the light up green when you've done it, and doing that gets you actively 10 gold. Which is actively technically the easiest way to get money in the game, because normal enemies don't drop money, they drop gems, which you can actively sell to get money. But I don't do that too much in this LP for reasons. So worth noting, when you actively stop time with Sakuya's main ability, it does slowly count down the timer no matter what from the max time, whatever you have it at that point in time. But moving actively accelerates the rate of its depletion dramatically. So if you're actively trying to use it to get around certain enemies and all that, you really have to keep an eye on that timer because it's very easy for the timer to end early if you're not paying attention and just take a dumb hit. With that said, the best case use for the time stopping is actively either platforming or active offense, as you can get right up in an enemy's face and just spam knives. Sort of. More on that in a minute. A bathtub here? If I stop time in water, the water solidifies and I won't be able to move. I should be careful. So water physics are actively kept in mind in this game. If you actively stop time and stand on it, it just becomes a solid platform. If you slow down time, though, you will still be able to move through it, no problem. Worth noting, water isn't in every stage in the game, but it comes up often enough you might as well always keep that in the back of your head. Attacking when time is stopped uses time instead of MP. Any movement when time is stopped reduces time. Once time meter's empty, you can no longer stop time until it regenerates. That's actually the thing I was about to say. Attacking while time is stopped will actively just eat up your time meter rather than your MP gauge, which is nice if you're trying to actively spam a lot of attacks with it, especially considering when it comes to a generation rate, your time regenerates faster than your MP. But there are two things to keep in mind with that. One, if you're getting a little too low on time and start attacking at that point, time will likely resume and you'll take a dumb hit that way. But also, you can only attack a certain amount of times while time is stopped to begin with. If you've noticed a blue number above Sakuya's head when I stop time outright that's in a larger font, that is the amount of knives I have left to throw out before she can just no longer throw out knives on that specific time stop.
Hello?
Huh? Is this Nitori? Why did you pick up?
What are you talking about? I'm the one who installed that phone.
You are?
Is the clock working?
Yes, it's very useful.
I'm glad to hear that. By the way, the store is ready, so come by when you have some time.
What?
I said I have some things that might be helpful, so come shop in my store. I gave you that clock, right?
I don't have any money, though.
You have jewels. I'll buy them from you.
Jewels? Oh, the ones I picked up on the road.
Those are precious resources. They have a lot of value.
Then I'll stop by soon. So that there is the main use of the gemstones that enemies drop upon defeat. The various types of them can be sold to Nitori for various amounts of gold depending on rarity, which then you can then give back to her to get various items. With that said, I don't buy a lot of items from her in this playthrough for reasons TM. Though not for nothing, she does sell some pretty useful stuff. So now let's start talking about the game's actual, layout. And a good way to actually talk about that is what's in this next room. warp zone. Step on a warp zone to teleport to another warp zone, but you can't move to one if you've never seen before. To use a warp zone, you must know at least 2. This is a warp point. If we find other rooms like it across the map, we can actively teleport from place to place. Because Luna Knights is a Metroidvania. Very much more deeply inspired by the Castlevania side of that genre than the Metroid side of it, admittedly. Which is kind of funny because that means there are Touhou fan games that are available for purchase that mimic parts of and are inspired by both halves of the main Castlevania franchise, the Metroid-adjacent ones as well as the platformers. In fact, earlier in this very video, I mentioned that one of my earliest LPs was a Touhou fan game. My 7th or 8th LP was one of the 2 games distinctly more inspired by Classicvania, Kumajo Remilia Scarlet Symphony, or as I called it at the time, and it's still relatively colloquially known, Touhouvania. I've actively meant to do that game's sequel for years. I just never found the opportunity to do so. And I figured instead of just jumping right into that, let's do something a little parallel to it. Why not? Worth noting in this game, by the way, enemies start off with pretty low health, but they get pretty inflated by end game. Sakuya takes a pretty consistently high amount of damage no matter what throughout the game, and that is especially related to spikes. So if you ever see spikes, try to stay away from them just in case. With that said, because this is also a Metroidvania, there's some hidden rooms like this one, but I actively can't get that HP up until later because I need a later power-up to get it. So I'll come back there later on in the LP. So my history with Luna Knights is relatively fresh. If you looked back at the start of the LP even, you would see when I made a save file. You could see my starting save file back there. I first played this about 2 years back on stream, actually. I had this through my partner's Steam library back when Steam Family Share worked the good way. And I won't lie, I actively didn't really click with the game at first, if only because of 2 factors. One, my main attacks taking up MP took a lot of getting used to, so I was constantly just running out of attacks. But also, the way this game's level design is structured, with how I was trying to explore through it, felt like it really stretched the game out. Getting quite ahead of ourselves, I recommend if you play this game yourself, go through to almost the end game before backtracking to get power-ups you know are there unless they're along the way, as this game's level design is very much more individual levels that are in a Metroidvania map setting, rather than a fully connected Metroidvania map. So right there we got our first proper mobility upgrade, the sliding knife. Not only is that an attack that allows you to just slide into enemies without taking any MP, but also it allows you to slide through small passageways. Surprise, surprise. And we've already seen quite a few of those throughout the starting area, so now we can actively fully explore this portion of the map. With that said, we don't need to go back towards the main part of this map, not this cave section, so I am going to quickly do some speed up here just to get us back there. I do this a couple times throughout the LP, more just to save time than anything, because in most cases I'm not even grabbing any new rooms, because this is a 100% LP in terms of getting the entire map in every pickup. There's technically one mode I never showcased, but that's because, to my knowledge, you don't get anything outside of score attack adjacent stuff for clearing it. I'll do a little more research into that between now and the next recording, but I'm fairly certain there's nothing tied to it outside of achievements. So now that we have the sliding knife, I specifically want to go back to where we just had that phone call with Vittori a few moments ago, as if we went a room further than that, there's a small crook you can only slide through. And we need to go through here in order to actually access the next part of this hot springs area, as you may have noticed there's also a couple of Symphony of the Night adjacent glowing doors in the level already. That's something this game does very regularly. There's a lot of color-coded doors that you need a specific color-coded key to actually access. Sometimes the keys are located in later levels, but they're usually located in the same level. The goal is to find them and then actively use those doors to access the next level somehow. But also here we got our first sub-weapon, Auto Aim. This throws a shitload of knives automatically at any nearby targets. It's good for area coverage with larger enemy groups, but it's also really good against boss fights. The only issue is if you try to use it when you are in time stop, it does actively use the same knife count as your total max you can use in time stop, so it's actively better to use when you're out and about rather than if you're doing anything else. There's our first key, the red key, so now we can go over here and open this red door we even already saw earlier. With that said, the sub-weapons are largely pretty varied in how they're used and what they can do, but they're also really good at draining your MP. My MP. I can't throw a knife like this. I need to recover MP. That's the first time I've actually run out of it in the game. And honestly, the moment you get your first sub-weapon, that's going to start happening a lot more often, as their costs are pretty high relative to the amount of MP you especially start the game with, especially with how slow the starting regeneration rate of MP is. That truly is one of the key reasons you really need to get a grip on the grazing system as soon as you can, because it'll allow you to have a much more constant flow of MP, meaning you'll be able to use a majority of your offensive options a lot more often. On top of the fact that's also really your only way of recovery in most instances. There is items you can buy for recovery over at Nitori, who we're heading over to right now, I believe. But the main way you're going to be recovering HP is grazing on bosses or enemies. So right there, we already got our next sub-weapon, the stun knife. I've heard some people not like this one too much. I like it myself a good bit. It's a slower knife that travels not as far because it actually does have some bullet drop, but it hits a lot harder than a single knife set even does. On top of that, it does have an electric shock, which I believe can also damage other enemies besides the one it makes direct contact with if there's a lot of them in the same vicinity, which there likely are to be.
Welcome. I have a lot of items here. If you're not going to shop, can you return the watch?
Okay. So here at Nitori's shop, like we've already said, you can actively sell the gems you've collected by killing enemies for gold, or you can just grind gold over at the trash baskets near vending machines to get up that amount. And you can spend that gold over here to either buy items that will recover your HP, magic, or time meter, a library card right out of the Symphony of the Night that'll bring Nitori directly to you, or just outright upgrades to your time meter, amount of knives you can have out during time stop, or buy a metric shitload of experience. And honestly, the experience is technically the most worthwhile thing there for the amount that you actively get from it, I believe. I don't buy much from her, though, throughout the game. In fact, that amount of gems I just gave her, I think, is the only time I actively give her gems in the game for reasons. Just to give a bit of a lead into this, I actively recommend not super relying on buying stuff from Nitori unless you do a lot of grinding at the trash baskets, as it will actively make one thing harder for you later on. With that said, after you do that thing, you're pretty much free to spend money and gems at her however you want, sort of. There is technically a secondary system to the gemstones where however many of a gemstone you have actively gives you a small, almost to the point of being unnoticeable boost to some of Sakuya's traits, like boosting her attack and defense a little bit, boosting the MP generation rate, which is probably the most useful one of all that, boosting the efficiency of graze and all that. So if you actively do technically want to make Sakuya her most efficient, you really don't want to sell gems to Nitori all that often, if at all, after maybe once. There's also another reason you don't want to do that. That is the main reason I don't do it, but honestly, that small little boost, as unnoticeable as it is, does go a long way to potentially boost your survivability, especially if you're just kind of gunning it throughout the game and not trying to grind, which really I don't recommend trying to grind experience in this game anyway, because the amount of experience you get per enemy really does drop off really badly by end game. If memory serves, this specific how to play sign talks about something I haven't mentioned yet. Notably, you can actively swap your sub-weapons in one of two ways. Either holding down the sub-weapon button allows you to select one by default, but you can also just use the shoulder buttons to scroll through them like it's Mega Man.
Hello, how are you?
Nitori? What is it this time?
I forgot to tell you this, but I installed a vending machine. Did you notice?
A vending machine?
I improved a machine that fell through from a parallel universe. You can drink some delicious juice. It's perfect for recovering strength and magic. Try it if you want. Oh, don't forget to throw out empty cans.
Oh, that box with the drink came out. I've already tried it.
That's good. I think the boss fight is soon, but if you want to shop, come again anytime.
Boss fight?
Bye-bye.
At the end of every single stage, there's of course going to be a boss fight, and honestly, you really do want to save before these, as they can be kind of rough. And you might notice before most of them, I also do a transition in some of you. Usually a relatively undecipherable fade transition. That's both for me to actively save what I've recorded up to that point, but also to make a copy of my save file, because I did want to do something very specific for this playthrough for my Steam account, at least. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Stop there. I won't let you take one step further. What are you doing, Meiling? I'm very sorry. These are orders by Lady Vermilia. I see, so you are real. If you want to pass, you must defeat me first. I usually wouldn't have any problems with you, but this might be a slightly difficult fight with my current situation. Lady Vermilia said there's no need to go easy on you. Prepare yourself. That, of course, is unnecessary. Come at me. So, bosses, also I'll get their main themes from the main games, which is really good because this game's soundtrack is just so many good covers. Bosses in this game are more adjacent to Mega Man bosses in terms of the pattern recognition than standard Castlevania bosses, which honestly kind of tracks with how Touhou's bosses tend to feel as you play the main shoot-em-ups anyway. So what Meiling does largely depends on whether or not she's on the ground or in the air. On the ground, she'll just throw a projectile at you outright, which is pretty easy to dodge. But when she's on the ground, she's also not too susceptible to damage from the front, as she'll often just guard against your knives with that shield we just saw her use. In midair, though, she has 2 attacks tied to 2 distinct types of movement. She'll either do a very quick and harsh jump to the opposite edge of the screen, in which case she'll just dive kick right at you, or she'll do a slower, more gentle, easy to read glide, which is going to usually end in her doing the multi-shot she did a moment ago. I'd recommend having your finger in any boss fight just constantly on the time stop button to either get a quick graze in on projectiles or actively react to bosses and give yourself a moment to dodge. But make sure you always remember that you have the time slowdown ability as well, as that's pretty useful to have if you're trying to conserve or regain your time meter along the way. With that said, there's one other note to bosses that we usually see towards the last 30 to 20% of their health, depending on the boss and what their pattern's feeling like at that point in time. She's strong. Then I'll have to use the last stand. During the last chunk of their health, all bosses have a super attack that's usually their most damaging attack, or at least the hardest to dodge. In Meiling's case, it's more the former than the latter, though, as it has a large enough charge period where you can easily just slow down, time or stop it, and get behind her, and that leaves her open for a lot of damage. Although Sakuya does have another ability that can help dodge that I haven't mentioned yet, although I think a tutorial did mention it, I just didn't read that part. Notably, if you hold down the jump button as you're jumping, your descent will actively be slowed down with a hover, because in Touhou lore, everyone can fly for usually a distinct reason per character, if memory serves. Heck, if memory serves, that was something you could really abuse, at least in Touhouvania 1, less so in Touhouvania 2 if memory serves, as it just made getting through levels a complete joke. Boss fights, though, not so much. You lose, Meiling. God, bosses explode violently in this. How frustrating. Let me pass. It can't be helped. But Sakuya-san. What? I don't know if this will be of any advice, but I'm not your only enemy. So, please be careful. I'll remember that. I'm not your only enemy. But that Meiling was the real Meiling. Lady Vermilia really likes complicated games. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we start off stage 2. See you guys then.